So, being someone who grew up when I grew up and who liked to read more than I liked to pay attention in my classes at school, I of course discovered Goosebumps, aka Stephen King for babies, as the style of R.L. Stine, the author of said books, is very reminiscent of a simplified version of that other author's style, often employing a similar method of making mundane things scary to deliver admittedly lesser scares and thrills, ones more appropriate for a younger audience. But I don't have to tell you any of that, because I'm sure that even if you weren't a fan of them yourself, you know what Goosebumps is. Everybody knows Goosebumps. Everybody knows about the cheesy titles, Night of the Living Dummy, Say Cheese and Die. Everybody knows about the more recent movie adaptations that we've gotten that were okay. And everybody in particular knows about the old TV adaptation, which had its ups and downs, but that I'm extremely nostalgic for. And that I think rounded out to be a pretty good adaptation overall. It tended to go really hard when it needed to. Primarily an anthology, it managed to bring some really solid production design to a lot of the more classic, memorable stories. I still absolutely love how weird and cheesy and like a stinking Power Rangers prop the camera from Say Cheese and Die was in that show. That show's version of Slappy the Dummy is iconic. And that opening music, and especially that shot where, like, the dog's eyes glow, still gets me. Like, obviously it's because I saw it when I was a kid, but it still kind of gives me chills even to this day. So, being someone who then graduated from that show to stuff like Buffy, which is also a horror drama, then grew further into someone who enjoys consuming and then discussing and critiquing media, obviously I was thrilled to see that a new Goosebumps show had been announced. It's a Disney Fox show. It's hosted on Hulu and maybe on Disney Plus. I'm not 100% sure. But, yeah, it's from that collection of guys that probably shouldn't all be under one umbrella company, but that's a topic for a different discussion. And the premise is really interesting compared to the old anthology-style show, because that's how the books worked. Each book, for the most part, there were some sequels and stuff here and there, but each book, for the most part, had a different cast of characters, and so the show did too. And that's where some of the weaknesses of the show come in, because they had to rotate in and out actors every single episode, and kid actors, like good kid actors, are hard to find. But rather than being an anthology like the source material is, and like that old show is, this was going to be a series with a regular cast and an at least partially serialized story, primarily focusing on a group of high schoolers who have to solve a town mystery while being plagued by supernatural threats taken from the Goosebumps books. And going into this, I was really hoping it would be something like Buffy or something. Primarily an episodic show where there was just enough connective tissue between the episodes that the mystery would be slowly unraveled. Unfortunately, that's not what it is. Instead, it is a fast-paced, highly serialized high school drama with like a generational mystery, and the Goosebumps stuff is just the random supernatural element that's thrown in to present these characters with some danger along the way to solving this mystery. Honestly, they could have just made up their own supernatural threats and used them here instead of the stuff from Goosebumps, and it would have been basically the same show. Unfortunately, the Goosebumps element here, while they do some of the adaptation stuff well, like it's stuff I could point out and say, hey, that's cool, that's that thing from that thing I like, and they're doing a pretty okay job of it here. For the most part, it's superfluous. Which is not to say that I hate the show. Actually, I'm actually kind of embarrassed to say I really like it, because it's not like amazing or anything. But I do think this is a fairly quality show. Like, the production value is really good. The cast, I think, is really strong. Like, they have a little bit of trouble here and there where the dialogue seems kind of rough, because this is a very cheesy, very tropey show. Like, if you've seen, like a Riverdale or something, like, Riverdale's a bad comparison to draw upon, because this is, like, nowhere in the ballpark of as stupid as Riverdale. But, like, it has a similar kind of tone to it, where, like, everything is just drama. And in a show like that, it can sometimes be hard to convey your character's dialogue in a believable way. Just, like, by default. But despite kind of feeling like it's trying to ape a similar tone to that, this show manages to have really consistently strong and likable characters who feel like real people with their own real issues, and yet are able to put that stuff aside and solve the problem at hand. And they don't, like, just hate each other for no reason except to make things more dramatic. They tend to be reasonable and want to help and just be decent. Like, they have their foibles, like I think of him as the main guy because he's the male character we focused on the most in the beginning. Isaiah, like, he cheats on a test so that he can play in a football game. That's one of the first things we see him do. But he's not a bad person. When somebody's, like, in danger or something and he can do something about it, he'll run in and do it, even while he's got a broken arm. Not to mention that one of the female characters in this, who just happens to be my favorite character in the show, at least so far, though Isabella's given her a run for her money. Her character's name is Margot, is played by Issa Briones, I think is how you pronounce her first name. I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find it. Who was one of the better things about the second worst season of Star Trek Picard, which I know sounds like a diss, but it's not. I'm actually really happy to see her here, so that was nice. And while the show certainly could have really taken its time bringing all of the main characters together and getting them started on solving the problem that is the fact that they're being haunted by a vengeful ghost, meaning to punish them so that their parents suffer for a past crime, it doesn't. And they actually really start to get to work on solving this thing in, like, the third and fourth episodes. Now, to be clear, it is far from a perfect show, even considering all those things that I do like about it. And also the fact that, like, even though they're arguably more flawed than their kids, the grown-up characters in this are also not useless at all, which is a nice change of pace. This is not a perfect show, and it's not, I would even say, a great show. I think it definitely could be better. And in fact, I'm going to be talking about this in an upcoming video, unless that one somehow gets out first. But, and I've talked about it elsewhere too. This show needed filler. Like, it would just be so much better objectively if it was a more episodic show. If, rather than just being thrust directly into the depths of this mystery, the characters had gotten wind of a mystery in their town, and this is just a town where supernatural stuff happens. And so they start investigating instances of supernatural stuff happening to try to uncover more clues in this, I don't know, like, mystery conspiracy or whatever. And that the serialization was just way more loosey-goosey than it is in this version. That would have been so much better because, well, one of the things I do like about the performances in this is that every single character in this show, which has a very large cast of characters, every one of them feels like a complete person the moment you meet them. There's a little bit of telling and not showing here and there when it comes to informing us about who they are. But for the most part, the moment you meet them and spend like a minute with them, you have a really good sense of who they are, and they all feel unique and quirky and fun. You want to see more of these characters. They're enjoyable to have on screen, just right out the gate. But they then kind of settle into the archetypes that are established by those intros and don't really change much over the course of the rest of the season, at least so far. Only the first 7 or 10 episodes have been released so far, so I don't know, maybe it'll change by the end. And giving us some quote-unquote filler episodes, some just episodic episodes that tell, for the most part, their own self-contained stories, would have given us a chance to see these characters in less stressful situations, and we would have gotten a feel for other aspects of who they are, and they would have had a little bit more room to grow and change and evolve. Also, Justin Long is in this. He plays a teacher that gets possessed by the ghost. And god dang it, I hate that he did, that he got possessed by the ghost, at least as early as he did, because it means that the kid characters, the high schooler characters, don't get to interact with the actual real version of his character until really late in the season. But when they do, it's just so much fun. Justin just has so much chemistry with these young actors, and it's so much fun to see them bounce off of each other, and it doesn't look like we're going to get a ton of that, and I desperately want to see more of that. It's one of the best parts of the show so far. In short, I'm enjoying myself watching this. I'm going to keep watching it as more episodes release, but it's not a good adaptation of Goosebumps. It could have been if it had done things slightly differently, but it's not. And that sucks. In fact, one of my main issues with it as an adaptation of Goosebumps, and something that I was worried about when I saw that it was going to be high school kids that were the main characters in the description for the show, is that Goosebumps is not written for high schoolers. It's written for middle schoolers. And there's a reason for that. I call Goosebumps like Stephen King for babies. And that's because not only is it written in a similar style, and not only does it take mundane things, sponges, cameras, a house, and make them creepy, but it deals with the kinds of themes of powerlessness that apply to middle schoolers, whereas King tends to do the same but for adults. And one of the ways that it does that for middle schoolers is its characters tend to be at about that age group, and so they're seen by society the same way that a real middle schooler is. Like a middle schooler, for example, like a 12, 13-year-old who comes up to their parents and says, like, I don't know, they saw like carnivorous mold growing in their basement or something. Like, their parents are going to be more likely to just think they're making up a story for the fun of it. But like if a 17-year-old comes up to their parents entirely seriously and tells them the exact same thing, they're more likely to be listened to. Also, if a middle schooler has something like haunting or cursing them and putting them in danger, they're not going to be allowed to get away with nearly as much stuff to try to outrun and or get rid of that thing than like what a high schooler would be allowed to do. The characters in this show are mostly entirely independent, just kind of able to run around and do whatever the heck they want when they want. A middle schooler wouldn't be able to do that. You'd be able to get drama out of the ways that they were limited in what actions they could take. Maybe you could have even used Justin Long's character as like the de facto leader of this group, as the one adult who believes them, but they still can't prove that something weird is happening yet, so they have to keep like working in secret to uncover the mystery. Right? Like, I think that's the show I would have made if I had been presented with this rough idea. Not just because it's a little bit truer to the books, but because this is not a show that I would watch with kids, like younger kids. I don't even think I'd watch it with like middle school kids, let alone kids younger than that, which the original Goosebumps show, I would argue, is appropriate for that age group too. But if you make this show with a middle school cast and you make it appropriate for kids of that age group, then adults of my generation who grew up with these books and with the original show could sit down and watch it with their kids who are at an appropriate age to enjoy the stories of those books for themselves for the first time. And this show could be like the gateway to that generation finding these stories, or like the bridge between the two generations that they could share with each other. This show, as it is, it doesn't serve that purpose. And I don't know that it was necessarily meant to, but like, I think it should have been, frankly, because that seems like a really freaking cool idea. Also, I don't like this show's version of Slappy nearly as much as the one in the old show. Probably just nostalgia talking, but I think he's just objectively inferior. But like, again, the characters are likable. I enjoy watching them. Justin Long's great. Like, he plays two different awkward, weird guys, the ghost and the teacher, and he's good at both of them, brings a different kind of presence to both of them. He's funny as both of them. I mean, I'd give it a watch. Except, unfortunately, because of things that have to do with the horrors of real life that I'm not going to get into because that's not what this video is about. We're actually boycotting Disney right now, if you guys didn't know that. Which makes me wish that there was, like, some other way that you could watch a show from one of Disney's streaming services aside from actually using the streaming service. But I don't even know how you would do that. I don't even know what that way would be. I mean, if you know a way, I guess you could still go watch the show that way. So use your best judgment. But either way, that's been my 2 cents on the new episodic adaptation of Goosebumps. What did you guys think of it? And also, what do you guys think of this? Because I had an idea. I realized that I hadn't really gotten any content out for Halloween this year. I'd just been kind of vibing and enjoying the Halloween mood. With, as much as I can enjoy anything right now with the way that everything is. And that reality had gotten me thinking, I still want to do Halloween content. But October's almost over. Halloween's almost over. So it wouldn't really be appropriate to do anymore. And then I got thinking, man, there are so many times when the end of October, Halloween rolls around, and I just wish I could continue to live in that Halloween vibe for a little bit longer. And then I had an idea. This month, this coming month, because this is going to come out on Halloween itself, the month of November, we are going to be celebrating Hallowvember. Once a week, every week this month, I am going to be releasing some sort of Halloween-themed review. I may even dot in some other Halloween-themed content. I'm not really sure yet. It's not all I'm going to be doing, but it's the majority. And that way, we get to keep that Halloween vibe going a little bit longer for myself and for you guys, who I'm sure also really wish Halloween didn't have to end, at least some of you. So in short, we all got to experience the Halloween vibe through October, and now you can come to my channel to continue to experience it throughout November as well. Honestly, I think it might be one of the better ideas that I've ever had. All that said though, guys, thoughts on the show if you've seen it. Let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else who you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out the description of the video for a link to where you can purchase my first trilogy of novels, since all 3 of them are available for purchase now. Do it, please. But, yeah. This has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.